Well, with that, we are going to move into our final session of the day. I'm kind of happy, kind of not happy, but I'm happy about the session. I'm not happy that it's the last one. I feel like there's so much more learnings that we could do. But you've all been listening to me for, I think, too long at this point, so I don't want to spend too much time just sitting here talking about it. The final session is future-proofing pre-sales teams with AI. This ties in so well. We talked about so many things about things you need to pay attention to, proper uses of it, how to sell it. But now let's talk about future-proofing our teams, how AI is shifting certain roles, shaping its structures, what the next generation of pre-sales teams could look like, and all of that. So without further ado, I'm going to give a warm, please join me in giving a warm welcome to our panel. First, our host, Jay Mulakala, is the Senior Director of Solutions Engineering at Drone Deploy. We have Deirdre Summercamp, who is Chief Solutions Officer at Skillibrium. Nikhil Sarma is the founder and CEO of Go-to-Market Solutions Consulting. And Sweta Kohli is Regional Director of Product Delivery and Customer Experience with Palo Alto Networks. And with that, let's get into the session. Over to you, Jay. Take it away.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jack. And really excited to be hosting today's session with such a stacked panel as well. And I've listened into a few of the morning sessions today, and I'm really excited about this topic in particular, especially for the leaders on the call about how we can start to future-proof our teams. So let's jump right into it. I think one of the questions that we've heard come up and continues to come up is how do we really how do we see our roles as a organization evolving? And Matt talked a little bit about this on the previous session. But what are some of the new top roles that we see emerging because of the developments in AI? And how do we see our solutions and solutions consulting and pre-sales organization kind of evolving and changing because of these developments? Nikhil, maybe I'll start with you.
Yeah, thank you, Jay, and thank you to PSC for having me on this panel. I've attended all the sessions today, and the one thing that stays with me is what a fantastic time it is to be an SE, right? And there's just so much going on. We've always talked about the role of SEs as being this bridge between technical capabilities and business outcomes. But very often we've kind of got stuck somewhere halfway along that bridge, right? And I sincerely believe that AI enables us now to really fully realize that vision. The tech is moving at a blinding speed. So this afternoon, perhaps you saw this on your LinkedIn, OpenAI has released a new imaging model. By the time these videos are published for everybody to see, there's probably going to be a new frontier model. So there's a tremendous amount that's happening on the tech side of things. But where companies are really going to see the return on investment that they make in this tech and the revenue acceleration that all of this promises is going to be on two things. Number one, it's going to be in the people. Number two, the processes, right? The people, because we are the ones who are going to upskill, we are going to adopt and deploy, and we are going to have to learn how to co-sell with AI. Now, all of this has to be done with proper processes in place. You have to minimize risk. You have to maximize compliance. We just heard a lot about that in the previous session. So to your question, Jay, we're going to start to see a lot of new roles. I think of it in two time frames, one that is 2 years from now and one that is 5 years from now. So my vision 2027 is that we're going to have a lot of GTM engineers on teams. And I don't mean this in the very narrow RevOps sense that you see these days of GTM engineers, but people who can really operationalize data across the customer life cycle. You're going to have AI enablement partners who are working closely with frontline teams. And you're also going to start seeing agent operations in the next couple of years. Now, fast forward to 5 years from now, I think there are going to be a couple of changes that are going to happen in our landscape. Number one, a lot of companies are going to move from a SaaS business model to an outcome as a service business model. And we're going to see a lot of multimodal agents out there. So you're going to have and agent operations is going to be a big thing. More evolved agent operations, very outcome focused roles, maybe hybrid roles of SEs, AEs, and value engineers. And compliance and security is going to be a huge thing. So people are already talking about guardian agents. And I start to think of that layer that is going to be an integral part of frontline sales teams.
I love the concept of guardian agents. I think that's the first time I've heard that term. But I couldn't agree more, Nikhil. I think that makes a lot of sense. Even at Drone Deploy, we've been experimenting with what does that hybrid look like? Is that a hybrid SE or is that a brand new dedicated role? And what does that look like over the next 5 to 7 years? Deirdre, I know you've got an opinion on this as well and experimenting with that. Could you share some of your thoughts?
Sure thing. So completely agree with what's been said. And I think that specialized roles such as AI data analysts, AI integration specialists, and AI process optimization experts will emerge. It will be critical to possess strategic skills as well as digital and AI literacy. So I think our roles will need to understand the types of AI and how digital transformation as a whole is affecting our buyers. The ability to know how AI impacts their specific industry with specific use cases will be extremely important. And then knowing how to understand and leverage AI-powered tools internally, right, including predictive analytics, will be really key. Other skills that I think will be important include solution architecture, integration skills, data analysis and visualization. And then lastly, the ability to adapt. That's going to be key, and continuous learning as tech will continue to change at a very rapid pace.
Yeah, I think being able to adapt is a really interesting point, Deirdre, especially because AI is moving so quickly. I know, like even as an organization, we had a training a few weeks ago to try and upskill a lot of our teams on AI. But even today, it's kind of it's not a stagnant technology. It's ever evolving, and you almost need a team that's willing to adapt and grow with that. That kind of leads me into my second question here, which I'm sure a few of you have asked your own internal teams. When it comes to adopting AI, whether it's even just for internal tooling or internal processes, whether it's AI or not, I'm sure some of the challenges some of us have faced is trying to get these kinds of tools or technologies approved to IT. But there's also challenges around how do we get internal adoption within companies, within our own organizations to adopt this kind of technology. So what are some mindset shifts that we as SE leaders might need to go through to fully embrace AI, whether both from a mindset perspective as well as a process perspective? Swetha, maybe I'll start with you for this one.
Sure. I think as pre-sales leaders, it starts with the mindset shift of understanding or clearing the fear complex, right? Once you embrace AI within the organization, it's all about, is it going to replace my job? Is my job secure 2 years from now, 3 years from now? So I think as pre-sales leader, addressing that proactively and having some strategic communication about AI is a partner. AI will be leveraged as a collaborator in trying to augment the current SE roles, the current pre-sales teams, and using the tool to augment and handle repetitive tasks, allowing to dedicate much of the SE's time to do higher level activities, as it was discussed in the few sessions before, right? The second mindset shift that I think needs to happen is what Deirdre mentioned in her previous statement, which is continuous learning. We're not in that, no longer in that zone of, I joined as an SE, I'm going to learn about the product, I'm going to learn about the pitch, I'm going to learn about my customer. That is not enough. With AI evolving, the SE's role also evolves. The SE's role also evolves in how do we continuously learn about my product, especially if it's an AI-driven product that is being put in the customer's environment. How is it going to impact the customer's environment? What if they add another data source? what do I need to tell them about the governance and security and quality practices that they need to put in place? That's all of that is continuous learning, and then keeping that AI first mindset as part of the SE's role. All of that those are fundamental shifts that need to happen within the organization.
No, it's really well said, Sweta. I think it also comes down to, when we're hiring teams, you're almost looking for that level of curiosity with SEs. And a
Absolutely.
curious SE is also one who's going to constantly adapt and evolve to bring in these technologies and learning how they change and evolve. It's like you mentioned, it's also not just enough to know and be onboarded on what the technology is today. It doesn't have to be AI, it could be your existing product, but can you evolve and adapt as your product and the AI industry grows?
Yep.
What about from like a change management perspective? That's obviously a pretty big initiative to take on internally and externally. Nikhil, I know you've got some really good points around, how do we tackle change management as an organization?
Yeah, thanks, Jay. And I really like Sweta's point from earlier. This, key things, right? We're talking about, we're looking into the future. I think we need to have this AI first mindset. So any change management effort requires two things. It requires leadership to provide some vision and some direction, and also the budget to explore these avenues. It requires the team to provide the insights from the field. It requires the team to provide traction and momentum. So you've got these two levels going. Now, McKinsey, they released two really interesting reports. And these are available for free for anybody to go see. So I highly recommend you do that. One was released in January of this year, and one was released 2 weeks ago on the 12th of March. There's a ton of really interesting data and trends. One thing that caught my attention, the adoption of AI in business units in companies across a fairly large sample of companies is directly proportional to a CEO's involvement and messaging. So this is right at the top. Then you come to the executive layer. The executives in these companies tended to overestimate the reluctance or the resistance to AI from their teams. And we saw that when Courtney asked that question right at the beginning. She said, how many people use AI on a regular basis? And the chat blew up, right? It was every hour, every day, for everything, pretty much. And so people are using this all over the place. Now, the key problem, so there's no adoption problem when it comes to individuals. The key challenge is, how do you operationalize this to make money for your company? How do you sell better? How do you drive better revenue? How do you have more scalable and efficient systems? That is the challenge. So what can we do as leaders? And I'm going to address like middle management leaders over here. I would say, number one, document along with your team what good looks like. Forget about AI. What does good look like for your processes and how you sell? That should be your baseline. And that's going to change, yes, but establish a baseline. Most companies don't have that. Now you start introducing AI. Work with your teams. Take a quarter at a time and say, let's try and tackle how we do discovery, or how we do demos, or whatever the modularized item is. You're not going to get it right the first time, and the technology is going to change under your feet, and that's completely okay. But if you're not experimenting now, then you're going to kind of be watching from the sidelines.
No, I think that's really well said, Nikhil. And to what Deirdre even mentioned earlier, I think those are the kinds of SEs that could be future good market engineers that are curious enough in knowing how to use this technology and use it to better enable their roles, who can then ultimately help broader SE teams. I think part of that challenge that you mentioned too is not necessarily adoption, but it's more about, how do you operationalize it? How do you get it to a point where you take it from this brainstorming phase of, great, here's all this phenomenal ideas that we can use to improve our team, and start to scale it out And I think we heard a little bit of that earlier this morning around how can we start to get more efficient around discovery calls? How can we get more efficient around demos that we're doing? And this is more of an open question to all of you. How can we either as pre-sales leaders or as individual SEs stay competitive and up to date and upskill our existing AI acumen, whether it's something that our companies currently offer and provide or outside of the companies themselves? So more of an open question to any of you if you'd like to answer.
I can get started. Practically speaking, get involved in learning AI fundamentals, right? Take courses, subscribe. There's amazing newsletters that come up every day with like good information on AI trends, insights, analysis, all of the case studies. Subscribe to the newsletters and read them daily like you would read news. Practically as much as that. Definitely go through credible channels because that's also more important. With the amount of AI information and evolution that is happening in the market, I also think credibility of the sources seems to be a concern for me, because as simple as people differentiating between what automation is and what AI agents do, they're completely different concepts. But then when you look at YouTube, for example, those two topics are very much collated. So think of sourcing your information from credible places where you can start to learn AI fundamentals, think about data. And then none of that is useful if you don't start using it in your practical day-to-day. So when you go to your work on a day-to-day basis, think about how, what are the use cases? How does your current workflow? What is your current workflow and how does it fit when you leverage AI into that workflow? Where are you adding tangible value if you put AI into that equation? And then I'd also encourage people to form smaller groups, like 2-3 people or 3-4 people, whatever it is, to form small pods and discuss, brainstorm ideas, see what comes out of it. I've had teams where they pull in maybe a product manager, maybe someone from support engineering, and they all generate beautiful ideas for brainstorming. And I've had an example in my previous company where they'd actually integrated AI on top of the documentation piece, which is helping, this is all internal documentation, which is helping the internal engineers, internal salespeople, internal sales enablement folks to actually generate all of the competitive intelligence, sales enablement decks, pitch decks, all of that so much more easier, just as part of those go-to-market hackathon type of activities, right? So always be thinking about whatever you learn on the channels outside, your courses outside, how do you apply it internally? In addition to that, what starts becoming even more important in a very AI-driven world is, yes, there is the tools, there is the AI literacy, there is all of that, but then the relevance of human intelligence is going to become even more valuable. So then how do you develop your human intelligence? How do you develop that strategic selling skills? How do you develop storytelling skills? All of that is also something you should constantly try to up-level yourself as both leaders as well as pre-sales professionals.
Yeah, I'd like to piggyback on that. So there's a couple of things. Number one, for the AI part, bring a point of view. Everyone on your team has an affinity towards something or the other, right? Typically, it's either technical things or security or the business side. This is pretty standard across most SE teams. All of these issues are AI issues. So, as Swetha was saying, kind of pick a project, work on it, and have different people work on different aspects of it. That is immediately you kind of multiply the efficacy of your team. So bring that point of view. That's number one. And the second thing is build undeniable skills that are human skills, where humans will still reach out to other humans for. Examples that come to mind: discovery, storytelling, influence, executive presence, negotiation. I think we're still a long way away from an AI agent, presenting to a board. Maybe in 3 years, I'll look back at this recording and say, okay, that was stupid to say, but I don't know. Let's go with that assumption. How are we? What is it that we're bringing as humans now? When we are co-selling, what is it that we can bring? So build those undeniable skills, and this will accelerate your career. Don't even think about it. Honestly, I don't think about it as, will I be employable as an SE? I don't care. Those roles might be completely different. Can you help a company sell a product? If that's what you want to do, then think about all these other aspects.
I think that's really well said, Nikhil. There's a trend that I can't recall where it was mentioned, but I like the concept of an AI trainer that is essentially helping you become a better version of yourself. So don't even just think of AI as a tool for you to get answers, but use it as almost a coach that helps you become better at what you do today. Whatever LLM you're using today, you can likely talk directly to it. At this stage in the technology, you can feed it with information that might be common objectives that your company commonly faces in sales evaluations, as an example, and say, hey, pretend you're a potential new customer we're talking to, throw objections at me and rate how I handle those objections when I respond them back to you. And even that is a really efficient and effective way, not necessarily to upskill your AI skills, but to upskill your core relationship building skills, which is what you're being employed to do at the end of the day and what gives you that job stability over time. But leveraging AI for you to become almost a better version of yourself. And I really love that concept and that version of using AI as this coach or as a trainer for yourself.
And what you said, Jay, on the AI trainers, I envision at some point in the near future, AI trainers is going to be another evolving role within the sales teams, right? How do you train your internal data models? Who's going to train your internal data models to preserve that efficacy, to think about quality of the data, right? And then bring all of that data into the foreground for pre-sales teams to use. So it feels like AI trainer is another role that will come out of evolution.
Yeah, I think it'll be particularly exciting, and I'm excited to see how that kind of supplements in with existing teams as well as what that looks like, with a dedicated team that's helping build out resources and enablement. I think I've been seeing a few in the comments. We'd all love more SE enablement and what that looks like for us as an organization. Well, great. I want to jump back a little bit and dive a little bit deeper into, again, how do we champion AI adoption within our own organizations? We talked a little bit about how we manage change management, how we can potentially use tools internally. I know many of our own organizations are starting to think about how do we adopt AI as a core aspect of our product development process that we can use with customers. What are some additional ways that we as pre-sales leaders can drive buy-in, create those initiatives, and more importantly, really measure and track success of these programs? It's going to allow us to build that flywheel effect to continue adoption. Nikhil, I'll start with you again.
Yeah, there is no playbook at the moment, which is what makes this so exciting, right? I think with any kind of change management program, and we've all kind of maybe I'd go out on a limb and say all of us have probably worked for someone who said, this is how it's going to be because I said so. And generally that has not worked very well. Right? I think it's important for us as leaders to really manage this change effectively. Get that buy-in. First of all, frame the questions from your business standpoint and keeping in mind, future developments as we can see them. What is the business problem that needs to be solved, right? What are other ways of doing it? Just have that open discussion. If AI becomes our hammer, then we're going to quickly run into an issue where someone's going to say, well, who said we need AI for this? I think engaging in some healthy debate to understand what the AI is supposed to do, how it's supposed to help us, and then kind of exploring those options is key. Run pilot projects. I think that is extremely important as well. So on the one hand, we have AI upskilling. On the other hand, I think we need to think a little bit about security, especially, again, Vision 2030. You have multimodal agents all over the place. Yeah. Last week, my LinkedIn blew up with all this talk about deal and rippling, right? And this was very old school espionage. You put somebody in that company, and it was a great read. But now imagine there's someone malicious and they're trying to crack into not just your code base, not just your CRM, but also into your agents, right? This is going to be a problem. So how do we handle the security aspect of this? So there's a lot that we need to be considering here in a change management perspective.
Great. Deirdre, I'll kick it over to you. I think on the flip side of this is how do we as companies adopt AI as part of our core development process? I think your organization is looking at implementing it. Could you share a little bit more about that?
Sure, absolutely. I think, it's interesting because we encourage everyone to look at the apps that are utilizing AI today. And what we're finding is there are many apps that have added AI because it's cool to do so. It doesn't really add substantial value, right, to what it is that the app is trying to accomplish. So in addition to using AI apps internally, our own platform incorporates AI. And one thing we decided to do is demonstrate our commitment to using AI responsibly, safely, and ethically. So we just completed the process of going through, and we just received our ISO 42001 certification. There are very few companies that have that, but it is all about, the ISO standard is really allowing us to say we're using it in a way that is responsible and it is ethical, and it does make sense, and we're keeping data safe.
Yeah, it's very exciting. I don't know any other companies that currently have that certification, so really exciting to see your organization have it. Swetha, over to you. I know part of this, kind of bringing this all together, both internal adoption as well as adoption through our companies, how do you see championing AI within your organization?
I think getting buy-in, either from the board or executive leadership, wherever you are at your level, is the first hurdle to cross, right? But then as pre-sales leaders or leaders of any organization for that matter, the fundamental piece that seems to be missing as I'm talking to more people is, like Deirdre pointed out, I'm going to do an AI project because it's cool. I'm going to do an AI project because I have to show something that I've done in the AI. That is not a good AI first mindset to start with. That plus, if as leaders, we need to go to our executive teams or executives going to the board, it is equally important to have a fundamental understanding of AI ourselves. What is AI? What is it doing? How do I leverage it? What do I need to keep in mind? What is the budget? What kind of problems am I really solving in my company? Is it even applicable? Is it, can I tie any of this to any of the strategic objectives I have for this year or the coming 3 years? Do I want to cut costs? Maybe I want to boost operational efficiency. Maybe I want to enhance my customers' experiences. So learning AI and identifying a use case or other use cases across your teams and marry those to the strategic priorities of the company. That's where we start with in starting to get the buy-in from our leadership and executive teams, right? And then once we do that, I've also found it practically very useful if we're able to find a case study of either a similar company, similar vertical, similar industry, who's adopted AI and seen some sort of gains, even a smaller one. If we're able to find that information, I think that helps with the buy-in process and putting the business case process. And then once we have that, the second part of the problem is cultural alignment, right? Like we talked about in some of our first conversations, hoping the teams understand and communicating to them that adopting and embracing AI is really not about job replacement. It's not about adding that fear complex of job security, and instead leveraging AI in different places. And here's where our long-term strategic vision is and why we're doing that. Communicating that and establishing smaller, like Nikhil said, take a small initiative, prove the point on what efficiency gains you've seen or what customer experiences are enhanced by doing that. And that kind of puts you on the roadmap to proving how AI can be leveraged within the business, easier to get buy-in, easier to get budget allocated, all of that, just like we do a product market fit, right? It's internal, but we have to prove the point by taking smaller initiative, aligning the culture, aligning the organization to the objectives and creating that shared vision, and then moving on to the right by adding other use cases. That's kind of what I think getting the buy-in process includes to champion AI within the company.
Yeah, a key theme that I think I've heard repeated amongst a couple of you over this past hour already is all about just keeping it simple. Start with a really simple initiative that proves value in a short period of time, and that can create the flywheel effect for your organization to adopt it even further. I know for us as an organization, and I'm sure many of you are constantly being asked, is how do we become more efficient? How do we do more with less people and less resources? But how can we be more efficient as an organization? Our leadership challenged all of our leaders to say, how do we become 10% more efficient this year using AI tools and technologies, and giving us access to resources, currently our data team, to help us develop some of those tools or programs and tests to see if we can become more efficient. One of the first things we did last year, and it's a very hacky product, but it serves the problem, is as an organization, we have a very small security team, still receive significantly more security questionnaires than our security team can address. And so SEs are still first line of defense for addressing those. We have this master spreadsheet that we've been maintaining for years that has 500 plus answers to 500 plus questions that have been asked over time that SEs have to go through, look for keywords, copy and paste into security questionnaires. It's not really efficient, takes a lot of time. There's also a high possibility of potentially answering the question incorrectly when you don't have that expertise. So we saw this as one really defined initiative where we said, we already have this trained document that we've created over time with correct answers. Let's train a simple model that takes that information and generates responses to those questions that makes our lives for our SE team easier. That was just a step, though. At the end of the day, myself, as well as our security team, still reviews every single response. So we're not going from 0 to 100 and just saying we're going to immediately send out these security questionnaires using AI 100% of the way. But that was an easy way for us to prove that we've been able to reduce an SE's time from what could have taken them an hour down to about 10 minutes to be able to really quickly fill out 100 question security questionnaire without a lot of effort. And we still have the processes in place to make sure we vet and validate that data. And at least for us as an organization, that proved out even something as simple as this can prove valuable, even though it's hacky and not very pretty on the back end, but can make it really efficient for our SE organization. So I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about, there's obviously ways we've talked about how AI is going to help develop new roles like go-to-market engineers. It's going to help us become more efficient as teams. How do we think AI is really going to help or modify or change the structure of pre-sales teams in our organizations? What will that look like for existing SEs and solutions consultants and solutions architects today? Deirdre, I'll start with you.
I think you shared a great example, right? You leveraged AI specifically for the security questionnaires. So I think headcount will likely be affected, but it will depend on how each company leverages AI and how the roles evolve within each team. AI will automate many of those traditional, technical, time-consuming tasks, and I think it will free up solution professionals to focus more on strategy, collaboration, solution alignment, business impact and outcome, and building relationships. So I do think it's important for every leader, though, to be thinking now how they can help their teams fill any AI-related skill gaps so that they're prepared for the specialized AI roles that will be needed in that 3 to 5 year period.
Really well said, Deirdre. And Nicole, I know you've got a perspective on what that looks like in a combination of roles as well. What does that look like between how we interact as teams with AI contributors or AI trainers, like we've talked about earlier?
Yeah, I think we don't know the answer to that, right? So we're all just kind of taking a stab at this. What is certain, very, very likely at least, is that we will have humans selling, co-selling with AI. So that is coming very soon in some form or the other. In some companies, it'll be more mature than in other companies. I ran this exercise with a couple of leaders 2 weeks ago, saying, why do we even need to call ourselves a solutions team? Just as a thought exercise, a bit of a controversial thing, but just to get some ideas out. I think what came out of that is we need to really understand what generalists look like in this new world and what specialists look like. And a lot of these could be hybrid roles. The idea of a value engineer is today a kind of standalone thing that happens maybe, once the deal has progressed way, further in a pipeline. Maybe that looks a little bit different. Maybe we think of them as an outcome architect. You can call it whatever fancy name you want, but the idea is that we may need to rethink roles. The other aspect over here is, the composition of teams can change. If you have an agent operations team, you're going to have someone who has a security background. You're going to have someone who has a pure technical background, someone with a business background, a legal background, right? So we're probably going to start seeing some hybrid teams around. I'm going to go back to that McKinsey report, and there was an interesting aspect there about headcount. So for all the people who were surveyed, about 30% said that there would be losses in the job force of anywhere between 10 and 20%. That was 30% of the respondents who said that. 30% of the respondents said there will be no loss of headcount. 20% of the respondents said there will be between a 2 and 10% gain in the workforce. And I think about 10% or so said they didn't know. So it's basically, we don't know at this point, but we've got to be agile and be open to our roles and our role definitions changing in the next few years.
Yeah, I think the outcomes piece is very interesting, Nikhil. I mean, even today, I know our companies and a lot of our companies are being asked, like, what is the problem we're solving, and can you completely solve that problem? And many of us might be a portion of it. And so the gap in the past has been, as a solutions organization, being able to deliver those types of solutions, whether it's something your product can deliver or your product in combination with others. But I like the concept of like focusing on the outcome and how is that going to change not only the products that a lot of our companies and organizations are developing, but also the role of our team and what that looks like.
Yeah.
I want to wrap up on one final question, and I'm reading through the Q&A, and there's a few similar questions around this topic. But it goes back to SE enablement and SE training. What does that look like when it comes to onboarding new SEs to your organization? What does that look like for continued engagement and enablement for your teams? And even prior to that, what does that look like within the interview process? And how do you test and evaluate for curiosity or AI competencies within SEs? Swetha, I'll start with you.
This is one of my favorite questions and favorite topics I've been noodling for a few weeks now, especially on the SE onboarding piece, right? The traditional SE onboarding is when we have a certain checklist of tasks when the SEs, when the new hire is coming on board, 30-day onboarding, 60-day onboarding, and then through the end of the process, we're like, hey, one of the exercises can be iterate the pitch deck internally with the team, right? So exercises like that. I am envisioning all of that is going to get enhanced with new AI platforms and tools that companies can leverage. And they're going to build hyper-personalized onboarding paths, very adaptive learning paths, which is geared towards what is the skill set of this SE? What product will they be selling? What customer segment will they be selling? What other parameters that this SE needs to consider, and we're going to build a very personalized onboarding schedule for them. And then on top of it, this is where I think middle managers play a key role. I've spoken to some leaders where they said, well, if I have an onboarding tool like that, maybe I don't need managers to like monitor the progress of the teams, right? I don't completely agree with that, because this is where the human connection becomes a really big deal, right? AI can teach what the product is and how they should sell and then give feedback on their pitches. But then the manager comes into the picture when they understand the progress the SE is making in the onboarding tasks, and then coaches the SE on how's their storytelling ability? Where do they enhance? What should they be thinking about when talking to certain kinds of customers? What signals should they be monitoring from the customers? None of this AI is not going to be as intelligent and monitor the human emotions in these cases, right? So I think a combination of having a AI build some of those onboarding tools, which is quite adaptive for the SEs to onboard quickly, plus that human in loop with managers coaching the SEs. I think that's where the future of SE onboarding is, which I'm so excited about.
I'm excited about hearing you talk about it in general. I'm going to be onboarding a new SE here in just a few months, and also thinking about what does that look like and how do we optimize even what we've been doing manually over the past few years, and use this as an opportunity to think about that. Nikhil, what are your thoughts on SE enablement and onboarding?
I'm excited about it too. And here's something maybe that you could try, Jay, or anyone could try that, frankly, today. What's the first thing that we do typically once you get your laptop and IT kind of, gives you access to all the stuff? Onboarding typically today is, go watch a bunch of videos. Kind of thinking of, okay, here's your AI companion, right? Give it a name. That's the first step. And then you add the parameters. How do you, I do this with ChatGPT, right? And it's like, this is kind of how I want to interact with you. This is how I learn. This is how I want you to spar with me. When I play devil's advocate, I want you to do this. When you play devil's advocate, I want you to do blah, blah, blah. So kind of build that out, and then kind of go wade into the waters of this company's knowledge base, right? And then I like what Swetha said about have the human in the loop. That this does not mean a manager abdicates his or her responsibility, right? But there's just so much that can be done. And when I think of certain companies and how their talent pool is kind of somewhat limited to people who have had experience in that industry vertical, I think that should now be less of a problem. I'm not saying it's going to go away, but if I can over a weekend or the course of a week just learn a tremendous amount about a new industry. I know I have done that in the past, but it took me a few months. I did it out of my personal interest. Now, if I have my AI companion onboarding me this way, I think that is a huge help, and it also removes some of the burden that enablement teams face today. So all of this is super exciting and kind of tying back full circle to some of what we talked about in the very first session. There's a plethora of tools. It's really about how we take each function and we operationalize for a revenue outcome. I think that is going to be critical.
Yeah, really valuable, Nikhil. And Deirdre, do you have an opinion on what this looks like maybe for your organization for continued SE enablement?
Yeah, so I'm in agreement with what the others said. And when I think about AI, it's all about what doesn't need human intervention, right? And what things can be automated. So yeah, I just think there's the balance that every company will find for their own team, because even though solutions architects, sales engineers, demo engineers, whatever role you're in that specific company you work for, you serve an industry that has unique needs of your buyers, and being in touch with that and getting people ramped up so that they can have the right conversations to co-sell, as was said before, I think is key.
Yeah, really valuable, Deirdre. I want to wrap us up here because I know we've got about 5 minutes left and we've got a couple different questions I want to address. But so far, I think what I've heard so far from all of you over the past hour in particular for future-proofing our pre-sales organizations are, one, really just start small. Don't try and churn the ocean in one go. Start with a really simple initiative. Start with a really key problem that you're looking to solve within your organizations. And that's going to help you build that change management case within your company if it's not already started. I think the second point I heard, whether it's for internal purposes or for external with customers, it's that AI is really going to be this assistant or this trainer that your teams can use for onboarding, that as pre-sales leaders we can use for enablement and engagement. But it also means for our sales organizations and our go-to-market team, it's not going to replace any of our roles, but it's going to allow us to be a lot more efficient in what we're doing today. And in the places where we are integrating AI, there's always going to be a human element for us to supplement and add to it. And the last thing I heard for really everyone on the call is that we know AI is here and it's going to accelerate a lot of our careers, and it could change and evolve our organization in ways that I don't know if any of us really know what that looks like immediately over the next year. But the most important piece is really building the competencies today to stay on top of the technology, to understand the trends, to experiment and see how that might impact your day-to-day job. That's the biggest thing that anyone can do, whether you're an SE or a pre-sales leader, to be able to future-proof your own role and your organization. Great. With 4 minutes to go, there's a few other questions in the chat that I'm not quite sure we fully answered. A few questions, probably more for you, Swetha, around, you mentioned reading a few AI newsletters and taking courses. Do you have any examples of newsletters or certifications or courses that you've taken or your team has taken that you'd recommend for the audience?
Yeah, a couple of my favorite newsletters is the Neuron. I think it's called Neuron AI or Neuron. And then the other one is I think it's a Medium blog. It's a blog on the Medium, which is written by I think it's called the Average Joe's newsletter. Both not specific for pre-sales, I'd say, but really good newsletters, really good information on AI trends, what's coming, how's it being used, what are the models that are being released by the large LLM providers, so things like that. Just keeping up to date. Those two are my favorite for sure.
Great. Nikhil, Deirdre, do you have any resources that you find yourself often going back to frequently?
I added one in the chat. There's this nice podcast that I found fairly recently. It's called the AI Daily Brief. It's 20 minutes, so I listen to that when I'm doing some chores, and I feel like I'm smarter. I probably am not, but it's good stuff. So I can recommend that. I like to consume material by reading more than podcasts. So I I would recommend, McKinsey and Gartner. They're putting out a lot of really good stuff, especially Gartner messaging for C-level executives. They have things for CISOs, for chief sales officers, for CEOs, etc. And I think it's really important for us as solutions engineers at all levels to understand how to talk that way. You don't have to copy the tone, but just kind of understand how are they structuring their thought so that you can have that kind of executive presence. And when you will be speaking to C levels and senior VPs, etc., at your prospects. I think there's a lot that one can learn from that.
Yeah, I would add in, certainly Gartner, McKinsey, things that have already been mentioned, and a combination of podcasts. And also look for those companies where you see them doing something unique with AI that truly does serve a great purpose and they're growing fast. I look for podcasts by founders, things like that.
Really valuable. And I think that the last thing I'll close on too, and one of my own team members mentioned this to me, is just using your favorite LLM of choice as your own search engine. You'd be surprised if you've got any questions, even on something like this, on what are the best AI newsletters I should be following. You'd be surprised on some of the answers that you can get. So the very final question or final response here too, I'd say, is start using the technology if you haven't already. It's more accessible and more affordable than it's ever been. And you can learn a lot just by starting to use the technology as opposed to even reading about it. Well, great. Thank you so much, Nikhil, Deirdre, Swetha. Really pleasure talking to all three of you. And I'll hand it over to Courtney to close out the AI and Presales Summit.
Thank you all so much. That was such a wonderful way to end the day. What a day it's been. I'm kind of sad it's coming to an end. I've learned so much. I guarantee everyone in the room with us today has also learned so much. Thank you, Jay, Nikhil, Deirdre, and Swetha for joining us for our final session and closing us out. On that note, like I said, that ends our summit for the day. I want to give a huge shout out to our sponsor, Reprise, for helping us bring this event to our community. If you have questions, comments, please find us in Slack, jump into the Slack community, engage with all the panelists today, find them on LinkedIn, connect with them. And I just want to thank you so much for being here today, being a part of our community. We could not do this without you. So thank you all so much for being here. And I will pass it off to Jack for some final words.
I did the thing where I was muted. Thank you, Courtney. Yeah, I couldn't have said it better than what Courtney just said. Really appreciate everyone being here, contributing. Thank you to all the panelists, and we'll please do Slack and continue the conversation there.
And for anyone asking about recordings, I forgot to mention they'll be available by mid next week. So keep your eye out for a few emails about those. Thank you all so much. Enjoy the rest of your week.